Okay. Now, to start, yan, our, if you can actually observe there, yan, I have flashed on the screen a diagram containing the terms learner, teacher, and learning environment. Yan. Now, if we try to trace back about the idea of the whole educational process, yan, the learner, he or she will always be at the center of all educational related processes. Si learner jud ang naa sa center ana. Because all the processes in the for the sake of learning, yan, is intended for the learner regardless of age, racial differences or racial backgrounds, and other profiles that makes us all diverse. Yan. Pero in the general sense, yan, the learner will always be at the center of the education process. And unsa di ay ang mga elements na mag-interact kay learner. Siyempre, the teacher, he or she is the primary um, provider or primary facilitator of the students' learning. Yan. And this learning can happen in a certain environment. Okay. Now, the environment may be in a physical classroom or in a virtual classroom like what we have now. Yeah. So, in everything that happens inside the school or yan, that is about education, it will always involve the learner. And kana siya buhaton for the sake of the learner. Siya. The learner will always be at the center of it all. And hence, yan, um, everything that you consider as part of your teaching learning process will be in consideration of the needs yan, of our learners. And hence, dili lang po na siya or it is not only exclusive to your teaching methods, but also in the way you do the assessment. Okay? Learners are varied or diverse. And if you can try to recall on your um, series of child and adolescent development, yan, di ba? According to the different theorists, even according to some psychologists. Yan. For instance, we have Howard Gardner. According to him, our learners have multiple intelligences. Yan. And hence, these multiple intelligences should be catered in the whole educative process. Yan. Which also includes kanang sa ato ang um, way of doing assessment. Yan siya. And so as to more likely explore on assessment in its sense, yan. Now, assessment, what is assessment? What are the concepts related to assessment? And how do we describe assessment? Okay. Now, to start off, assessment has uh, this type of general description. Okay. When we see assessment of learning, yan, it deals with measuring concepts, ideas, and abstract constructs that are actually related to um, the students themselves. Okay. So we will try to assess how much do the students know, yan, how much they can do, or how excellent they can be to perform a certain skill. Yan. Or in another sense, yan, assessment deals with gathering information about our learners. May it be na kanang scores nila or ilahang um, how they perform, yan. But also it includes the attitudes, yan, their perceptions, and how they conceive their ideas. So tanan nga na siya. Appeal siya sa assessment of learning. Um, before this new idea of what an assessment of learning is about, yan, the traditional na concept of assessment of learning is that it is you do assessment by conducting an examination for a certain paper and pencil test. But now, on its um, redefined, redefined or reinvented, yan, its present definition is that dili lang siya or dili lang siya exclusive for paper and pencil tests, but also it involves tests that measures attitude, yan. Dili lang gid pud siya test, but also performances, yan, observations, and everything that goes beyond the cognitive level of our learners. Yan siya. That which na maka-assess ta if there is improvement of their or if there is learning. So that is assessment of learning na siya. What are the different concepts that are related to assessment of learning? There are actually four terminologies that which na when we say assessment of learning, these are usually involved or included. We have the test, measurement, uh, evaluation, and assessment. Okay? Now, what are these four pala? Yan. How are they or why are they said to be related to assessment of learning? First off, let us describe what is a test. When we say test, this is the instrument designed to measure any characteristics or even knowledge ba? Yan. An ability, perception, attitude. Okay? So the test is the instrument. So say for example, if you gather data, yan, if you gather data about a certain group of people or a group of individuals regarding what is their perception about teaching. Yan. Say for example, you ask them a series of questions. Why, what do you think is teaching? Yan. So, ang imong mga mag-gather na information from those people, is your data. But the set of questions that you used and or the instrument that you used in order to determine the people's perception about teaching, that is the test. Okay, let me cite another example. Yan. Medyo concrete or medyo obvious na example. Uh, when we do examinations, yan, the tests or the examination items in itself, that is the instrument that which we will try to measure how much do the student learn about a certain concept. Yan. Say for example, ba, prelim exam. Unsa ang coverage sa prelim examination? Yan. Say for instance, for your prelim, you are asked or the coverage of that test is about the say for instance, phases of matter. Yan. So, what you are trying to assess there, yan, or to determine there is how much are your students' knowledge about the phases of matter. And hence, katong ay magigamit na questionnaire, yan, that is the test. Siya. If, for example, if it is a um, performance task, okay, performance task, dili man na siya nga dire-diretso lang na mag-perform, okay, naman tay ginatawag na rubrics. We have the rubrics that states the criteria of what should be included in performance. Yan. Say for instance, you are to demonstrate, yan, a certain experiment or how well do you conduct a certain experiment. Yan siya. And the rubrics that will be used to assess you, that is the test. Okay? So, muna siya ang test na to. Now, the second concept, yan, is measurement. Yan. What is measurement? This is the process of quantifying the degree to which someone or something possesses a given trait. Okay? Say for example, yan, nag-exam. Exam ha? Yan. Now, ang exam is a 50-item test. Again, that the examination is the test component. Now, ikaw na nag-take sa test, yan, you got a score of 37 over 50. Sample lang ha. Yan. From that 50-item test, you got a score of 37 over 50. Now, the score there, that is 37 over 50, that is the measurement. Yan. Anong measurement man siya, miss? Kasi quantified na version na siya of how well you did a certain performance or how well you did on that test. Siya. How much of the competency were you able to acquire based on the given test? Yan. Si measurement, siya tong score. Okay? Quantified version. Miss, what if kanang performance task siya? What is the component there na makaingon mi nga measurement na? Yan. Okay, sa rubrics, um, or say for example, mga criteria for judging. Ayan. Ba? If you would like to judge a certain performance, say for example, drama. Yan. Uso man na siya sa high school, di ba? Kana magdrama-drama sa una. Yan. What if i-quantify na to na siya or unsaon na to nga magkaroon og quantified yan na version of a certain dramatical performance. Yan. So, naman na siya scoring or criteria. Yan. O, criteria sa drama na performance. Say, for example, it includes um, uh, facial expressions of the performers, 20% or 20 points. Yan. Props, 10 points. Yan. Overall performance, 20 points. Yan. Audience impact, 10 points. Okay? Now, after na i-total na siya for each criteria, then the final score there, that is your measurement na. Okay? Katong imong written numeric, usually, or the general description about the performance. Okay? Miss, pwede hatag pag another example. Okay, another one. Say for example, yan, pag mag-take og kanang TESDA na courses, okay? After you take a TESDA short course, yan, you actually do that assessment. Yan. Meron yan siyang final assessment that which uh, it is conducted in order for you to receive a certification about that skill. Yan. Say for example, bookkeeping ba na siya? So pa ganina siya? Computer hardware servicing, automotive. Yan. Now, naman na sila equivalent na TESDA certification. And before the certification are given, yan, they do or they take a certain assessment. Yan. Now, for a person to be TESDA certified on that certain skill, yan, ang description lang ana niya is, or wala na siya kanang numeric jud na grade. Yan, okay? Pero, mahatagan ka sa certification if, yan, you receive an overall description of your performance to be competent. Yan, naman na siya description. And that description there, yan, is a part of assessment na. Yan. Now, these measurement, usually they are the assigning of numbers of a certain performance. Yan. Based sa nakaset na criteria, yan, or based sa nakaset na unsa di ay ang scoring ana niya. Yan. Kung exam, pila ka book imong items na tama, yan siya. Or pila ka buok ang imuhang items na ing-ani imong answer, okay? That is for the measurement, the quantification. Now another or wait, Now there are actually 3 steps that are involved in measurement. First off, you need to identify and define the quality or attribute that is to be measured. Okay? Unsa day imong objective nga gusto i-target? So ngano di ay nga imuha siyang or unsa ang gina-assess ana. Yan. Skills ba? Knowledge ba na? Yan. Second is determine a set of operations by which the attribute may be made manifest and perceivable. Okay? Say for example, mo na ka ng mga criteria for judging dihang dapita. Okay? Mo na ang naa sa as part of the measurement. And lastly, establishing a set of procedures or definitions for translating observations into quantitative statement of degree or amount. Yan. So part na siya sa how you do the measurement. Yan siya. So unsa man na imong scoring rubric, tagpila ba na siya ka points per criteria. Yan. Or if you have indicated the set of criteria that you will be checking for that performance, how many points is allocated or how many percent is allocated for each criteria. If that is an examination, what are the topics included in that examination? How many questions are allocated for each topic? Yan. And then, how much did the student got correct? Yan. In each of the component. Pwede siya ingana. Okay, that is part of measurement. Now, the third concept is evaluation. This is the process of making judgment yan, about the quality of a performance or product or skill. Say, for example, okay, balik na punta sa test. Ha? Okay, the test is a multiple choice test, 50 items, about the phases of matter. Again, the test is about the phases of matter. It's a 50-item multiple choice test. Sa measurement, yan, ikaw na nag-take sa test, yan, you got a score of 37 over 50. Okay? 37 over 50 ha. Pag-abot sa evaluation, yan. Now, i-determine na to kung ang 37 ba, is it a passing score or a failing score? So, providing judgment on the quantified version of the level of competency of the learner. So, balikan na to ha. Based sa iyang measurement, 37 over 50. Now, ang i-declare ni teacher or ang i-declare na set standard ato nga test is that the passing score is 40. Okay? It was declared that the passing score is 40. Now, ikaw na nakakuha og score na 37 over 50, how will you describe your score? Is it a passing score or a failing score? In relation to the set standard, yan, ingon man si teacher na or nakaset man nga standard adto daw nga test kay para moingon na past yan ang imong performance yan dapat mo tungtong daw kag score na 40. Kaso, imong score is 37. Yan. So hence, we can therefore conclude that you obtained a failing score on that test. Yan. Kasi based man siya sa naka-target na competency or naka-target na level. Okay? Say, another example. Yan. Say for instance, naatay kadtong or if you can actually or if we actually go back sa katugan ng grading system na to. Yeah. In our grading system, we have presented a range of values. Yan. In our grading system, 98 to 100 is described as highly satisfactory na score or outstanding rather. Sorry. And outstanding. Tapos, it is also stated in our grading system, ayan, that the lowest passing score would have to be 75. Yan. So all scores that are higher or equal to 75 or all grades higher or equal to 75 is considered as a passing grade. Yan. 4.0, 3.5, 3.0, 2.5, and 2.0, they are all passing grades. Now, if you are a student, yan, and you got a grade of 3.5, yan, it means that you received a passing grade. Yan. What if nakadawat og 1.0? It means that 1.0 is the failing grade. Yan. Hence, it means na failed ang imong performance for that subject. Okay? So, evaluation is that you give a description based on the given quantified value. Yeah. Providing judgment about the performance of the learner. Okay? Now, in assessment of student learning, there are actually five important things to consider in terms of evaluation. First is that we have evaluation for feedback, evaluation for control, yan. We have evaluation for research. We also have evaluation for intervention and evaluation for power. Now with these, yan, these are how evaluation can also be utilized. When we say evaluation for feedback, yan. Say for example, nabalaan ni teacher na after sa iyahang lecture about um, the different land formations, sa pa lang na ha, yan. Nabalaan ni teacher na after sa iyang lecture about the different land formations, majority sa iyang students kay nag-fail sa assessment task na iyang gihatag. Yan. So, nganong nag-fail man na siya? Pwede na um, naay isa ka student dito that which na pinakababa jud iyahang score. Yan. Almost zero iyahang rating. So nga naman na siya. So you may ask your student or pwede nimo siya nga magamit or pag-evaluate nimo, pwede siya na mag-provide sa imong information nga there might be something wrong sa imong manner of teaching or there might be something wrong with your test. Yan. Or assessment procedure. Or basin na ay problem ang student mo nang wala siya um, properly answer dito. So, you may be able to inform your students or at the same time, identify what are their strengths and weaknesses. Yan, pwede po na siya. At the same time or on another setup naman din, yan. Say for example, demonstrations. Yan. Now, one of your students or for each of the students who actually perform the demonstration, na akay mga nakita nga pwede na nilang areas for improvement. So by the use of your evaluation technique, yan, or evaluation procedure, you can readily inform your learners na, okay, um, student 1, ang imuhang performance or imong demonstration is good, pero you can improve this by, say for instance, hinay man iyang tingog. So, pwede nga, i-inform nimo siya nga, you can practice modulating your voice so that all your students will hear you. Yan. Another feedback, pwede mo ingon nga, ah, kanang hawod ka or daghan kag istorya na content pero medyo boring imong klase. Yan. Or medyo boring ka magdala sa imuhang mga students. Pwede na siya. So the evaluation can be used in that manner. Second or another is that evaluation for control in the sense that there might be decisions in the school that which nga maapektuhan or nga mahimo or some aspects in the administrative area yan can actually be decided further based on the results of student assessment or evaluation. Yan. Say for example, you do course evaluation or course assessment every or before mag-end ang term. Yan. Now, if for instance, we see there part of the results of the course assessment Meaning you evaluate the quality of the subject. Yan. After sa course assessment or after analysis of the results of the course assessment, it was found that um, the subject seemed to be very irrelevant, or the students do not see the importance of learning about that subject. Yan. So the school can do something about it. Yan o ang feeling sa mga estudyante nga, wala man di pulo sa amo ang subject. Uy, sige. So, unsay reason or what's the reason behind that? So, evaluation can be done on those aspects. Okay? The third purpose for evaluation is for research. Yan. Um, if you can actually try to take a look, most researches, yan, kung, will actually involve assessments. Yan. Or, daghan ng researches na mo involve jud og assessment. And then, information that are retrieved from assessment procedures can actually be used for research purposes. Say, for instance, you would like to identify whether the student's attitude towards learning is related to his or her performance on a certain exam. Example lang na siya ha. Yan. Attitude towards learning a certain subject. Yan. Is it related to how the students perform during certain examinations? Yan. Naunsaon man na siya nga paggamit for research. Yan. Pwede nga si researcher i-determine niya yan, what are the students' attitude? Are they engaged? Yeah, or are they or do they have a very high attitude of learning that subject? Mo na siya nga dagko sila grades? Or is it because na dili sila very motivated to learn about that subject, mo na nga kag may pwede lang scores. Okay? So, assessment information or evaluation information can further be utilized for research purposes. Okay, another, evaluation for intervention. In the sense na kung naa kay mga estudyante dinha nga naglisod, yan, pwede na nato pangitag paraan para yan ma-address kung unsa di ilang gikalisudan. Yan. And assessment can actually be used for that. Yan. How do we do the intervention? Say for example, um, sa katong mga nakatake sa achievement test last semester or before tong nag-end ang last the school year, di ba? Nag-take mo og uh, achievement test about the subjects na inyuhang nakuha within that school year. Yan. Now, after naay mga estudyante nga gibutang sa katong diamonds na sa to nga intervention plan o diamonds in the rough something na section. Yan. As implemented by our program head. So, nganong na-implement man to siya? Based man to siya sa result sa inyong sa evaluation of your achievement tests. Yan. Nga na estudyante or na yung mga estudyante na naglisod ani nga topic or naglisod ani nga content mo na nga kailangan na magkandak og intervention para matabangan sila. Yan siya. Okay, multi-purpose adto. So if you obtained a low score on a certain cluster or component, yan, we may be able to determine how to assist you para mag-improve inyong performance dito. Okay, another or in connection to that, yan, please do not forget to take your diagnostic examinations today. Yan. It will be available until later this evening. Yan. Part na siya or that is actually another form of how evaluation can be used for intervention. After you take the test, we will actually be analyzing the results of your uh, diagnostic test. And after na mo ma-determine, yan, pwede nga naami subjects or contents that which dito among i-intensify for instruction, yan. Or mas butangan og emphasis dito. Okay? Now, fifth purpose, yan, or fifth importance ni evaluation is evaluation for power. Say power, nganong power siya, miss? Yan. Because results of evaluation can actually be used in varied ways. Yan. And it can also help administrators and not only school administrators but DepEd as a whole. Yan. Say for example, last 2018, there was an international research or international survey conducted na among 79 countries. That which to determine ang level of performance sa students aging 15 years old, yan, from the 79 countries in terms of reading, science, reading comprehension, science, and mathematics. Okay? Now, based sa results adto, okay, they actually presented their results last 2019. Yan. And ang naggawas na result dito is that the Philippines ranked lowest in reading and in science. Kita ang pinakababa og rating sa reading o sa science in terms of or in comparison of the 79 countries. Now, unsay gibuhat ana sa DepEd kasi it's very alarming na ang students sa Philippines are very poor in reading pala. Yan. And very poor in sciences. And in mathematics naman, we are second to the last of that. So, ika-78 punta. Yan. Indicating na there might be something wrong with our system. Nga no, dili ta become, we can't be at par with the other countries. Yan. So, with that, as a result of that evaluation, yan, so, ang Philippines, they tried to recheck as well the curriculum. Muna siya nga naay changes po sa curriculum. And hence, yan, um, pag-abot sa college or kumbaga as the learners grow with their different levels in the education aspect, yan. So, medyo naay gina-check or gina-revise or naay gipangbuhat na mga interventions ang DepEd National Office in order to address that concern. Kasi it was very alarming in the sense na murag kahadlok ba ni nga balita nga ing ato ang atong performance for our students. And to think that they are in the basic education level. Now, what will happen if they go to the higher education levels na? Yan. So, evaluation can be used for power, for legislations as well, yan, and for other um, purposes pa. Okay? Now, that is evaluation. Last terminology, that is assessment. Assessment as a whole, that is your um, systematic collection, review, and use of information about educational programs undertaken for the purpose of improving student learning and development. Okay? Now, si assessment na, mo na nito siya tong as a whole. Okay? The utilization of the tests, yan, or systematically utilizing tests in order to collect information, yan, information retrieved from measurements and evaluation, yan. Tapos, in order to collate pa jud na siya, and then we can arrive with yan, more purposeful events such as student learning, improvement, and development. So that is assessment. So as to recall, okay, we have 4 terminologies related to assessment of learning, and those are tests, measurement, assessment, and evaluation. Yan. And these 4 terminologies yan, are also in the sense na correlated with each other. However, they need to exist. Yan. In order for the whole process to be functional. Okay? Now, what are the different practices that can actually be involved when we do the assessment para maging effective siya? Yan. First is to show criteria and models in advance. Say for example, yan, sa mga students na to, gusto ta nga ilahang i-perform is very good na output. Yan. So, para kabalo sila, unsay lang gina-expect na or unsay gina-expect na makita sa ilahang output. Yan. So, you show them the criteria. What are they being judged for? Unsay mga areas that will be considered as you grade or judge their performance or their outputs. Yan. And if you have a certain sample or model related to that performance, you can show that in advance. Para na sila idea. Yan. What they should do, yan, and so on and so forth. Second is you can do assessment before teaching. Okay? So, say for instance, you can deploy a certain test in order for you to determine how much do your students already know. Yan. And if you observe na based sa imuhang pre-teaching na assessment, nakita nimo nga medyo weak sila ani nga skill or competency na dapat kinahanglan or needed siya in order for you to continue the teaching or to start the teaching of another concept, yan. So you can do interventions after knowing that. Yan. Next, offer appropriate choices. Kasi nga, students are diverse. Yan. Some students have different ways of learning. Yan. And hence, at some point, students have different ways of expressing their understanding of concepts as well. Yan. So, pwede nga, you can allow them to be diverse and be creative with their outputs. Yan. Also, or the fourth consideration for effective learning is to provide feedback early and often. Yan. So, kung gipasa na siya karon na output, yan, and you have enough time yan, to check the output, you can try to take a look and then provide feedback or comment kung unsay lang pwede pa i-improve. And then, let the student create another output yan, or an improved version of what he or she had presented. Yan. Also, yan, encourage self-assessment and setting for our students. Yan. Though some students are actually very goal-driven nga dapat best to them kung ang ako ang output. Yan. Pero as a teacher, you should try to do something yan that the students should be goal-oriented na um, dili sila mo pasa og basta bala na lagi na pasa na na importante na mo pasa yan so that we can do away with that idea. And last but not the least, okay, allow new evidence of achievement to replace old evidence. Yan. Sometimes or our learners actually improve over time due to feedbacking, yan, or results of feedbacks and self-assessments. So, allow your students to present kung naaba sila'y na-improve, yan, or new evidences of learning or achievement. Yan siya. Okay? Now, in relation to assessment, yan, we actually have three terminologies, yan, or more like these are three general concepts rather, yan, that are also related to assessment. Yan. We have what we call assessment of learning, assessment for learning, and assessment as learning. Okay, tulo lang na ilang diferensya kanang ilahang word that is connecting assessment and learning. For, of, and as. Okay? Unsay differences din na nila. Yan. First off, when we say assessment for learning. Assessment for learning is done before and during instruction. And ang reason nga nung i-conduct na sila is that para makita ni teacher, yan, ma-assess ni teacher ang current state or ang development or progress sa learner. Okay, say for example, di ba pag magklase or inyong teachers before, yan, pag mag-conduct og klase, maghatag og quiz during that hour. Yan, or during that session. Maghatag og quiz. Pag human og hatag sa quiz, kay i-check kung pila inyong scores, yan, na i-record. Or sometimes, tanawon ni teacher kung kabalo na ba mo mag-solve ani. Yan. For example, sa math. Yan. Manaay mga pa-board work. Okay? Now, that is an example of assessment for learning. And they are actually done in order to determine how much you can do right now or at the current state. Yan, okay? So, kumbaga, while nagpadayon ta sa lesson, yan, or while the lesson is still on progress, yan, how much can you do or how much have you understood? Yan. Now, for assessment for learning, we have 3 types of assessment included there: placement, formative, and diagnostic. Each of them will be discussed later. Yan. Now, another is assessment of learning. To give emphasis, assessment of learning. This is a form of assessment that is done after instruction. Okay? After instruction. Ang reason na niya is that um, after na makandak na siya, yan, say for instance, in a certain teacher had discussed one unit related to history. Yan. And he or she will try to assess how much have you understood about that chapter. Yan. And then, or how much have you retained? Have you achieved the expected level of competence? Yan. So, the teacher will do an assessment of learning. Yan. And what happens there is that we have one form or one type of assessment there that is called summative assessment. And what happens in assessment of learning, it will reveal whether or not instructions have successfully achieved the curriculum outcomes. Meaning, yan, if ang reason nga nung or ang objectives sa inyong pag-discuss ana nga unit is that dapat ang imong mga estudyante or the students should be able to determine what state of matter a certain presented object is or concept is. Yan. So in exammative assessment nimo, maka-determine sila nga kung naa kay picture of glass, yan. So unsa man na siya? Solid, liquid, gas. Ano siya? Yan. Another, kung ipakita nimo sa ila ang picture or a picture of tawag ani a river. Yan. The water in the river is what form of or what state of matter? Yan. So, what happens in the assessment of learning is you will try to determine kung kabalo na ba jud sila. Yan. Okay. Let me cite another example. Yan. 'Di ba kanang pag magtuon ta og luto, yan. 'Di ba naman na siya kanang while naga-start pa ta og tuon, yan, bisag sa balay lang ni siya, yan. Well, when we are still starting to learn how to cook, yan, usually na ay adult that will try to assist us, yan, or tell us na you chop this like this, yan. So, hiwaon ni siya in this manner or pag maggisa ka kani ang unahon, okay, ang sarili ang unahon. I mean, mo ni mo una nga ibutang nga lamas and blah blah blah. Yan. And then sooner or later without the adult thingy, yan, they will allow you to cook na ikaw lang. Yan. And that is tapos after nimo og luto tilawan nila kung unsay output kung makaon ba ang imuhang giluto nga ikaw lang ang nagluto yan nga walay ni assist sa imuha and hence that is a form of summative assessment or assessment of learning. Ganyan siya. Okay? Now, lastly is assessment as learning. Yan. This is an assessment or a form of assessment done in order to check yourself. Okay? Now, this is one form of assessment that is included for assessment as learning is self-assessment. Yan. You determine what are your own strengths and weaknesses. Yan. You determine how much can I do on my own. Yan. What are the areas that I need to improve. Yan. What can I do in order to improve myself on these areas? And so on and so forth. Yan. Now, there are these three concepts of assessment. Assessment for learning, assessment of learning, and assessment as learning. Yan. These are actually in the sense na how do we determine or how do we categorize the different types of assessment. Yan. See, assessment for learning, these are done before and during instruction. Assessment of learning is done after instruction. And assessment as learning is done as a form of self-assessment. Yan. Now, I was talking about placement, formative, and diagnostic earlier, and summative. Now, unsa day kalainan na ni nila? When we say formative assessment, these are actually kanang ginakandak during classes. Usually. Yan. Example, imong topic karon mag-discuss daw ka, imong topic for today is on um, what topics are there in science? Say for example, your topic for today is about sources of earthquakes. Okay, speaking of, itong naglinog ka ganina, yan. What are the different types of source for an earthquake? Yan, we have the tectonic and the um, volcanic. Yan. So, if after or during this your discussion, yan, you want to check or you want to determine, yan, if your students were actually able to grasp the concept, then you can do the formative assessment. Mag-drills ba ka during the discussion? Yan. Or during that interval? Yan. Short-term intervals usually ang formative assessment. Take note, formative assessment is not recorded. Ano man na siyang not recorded siya? Because it is only used to assess kumbaga immediate na feedbacking kung nakasabot na ba ang mga estudyante. As of now, yan. Okay? Kumbaga slow man siya nga process na na-digest na ba nila imong gina-discuss. That is the reason yan dili sa siya recorded. Okay? Pero the formative assessment is very helpful in order to tell yourself yan and your students about their current progress. Yan. Another form of assessment, yan, or functions of assessment, this is still under assessment for learning, yan, is the diagnostic assessment. Yan. Diagnostic assessment is actually done in order to determine difficulties, recurring or persistent difficulties. And this is done as well to determine unsay cause anong naglisod ka ana nga topic unsa jud ay problema and the results for the diagnostic assessment is actually used for formulating a remedial instruction or remedial plan. Example, yan, nagpa-exam na ka or nagpa-take ka og chapter quiz. Now, pag after nimo pa-take sa chapter quiz, na jud kay estudyante or kana nga klase tibuok section jud nga anong bagsak man jud sila sa imuhang gikandak na um, chapter quiz. Unsay problem di ay? Yan. So, after seeing that result, yan, you conduct another assessment to properly determine unsa gyud ay reason. Okay? Pwede nga after nimo conduct sa diagnostic assessment, makita nimo didto, ing ani di ay mao di ni rason nganong dili sila kasabot. Okay. First, pwede nga kulang ako nahatag na examples. Second, pwede na the students were actually doing outputs for another subject while I am doing my lectures for this subject. Yan. Pwede po na siya. Or some other problems na pwede nimo makita. And the diagnostic assessment may be able to help on that. Okay? So say for example, gipatake na pud mo og exam or bag-o na pud na test. Yan. Tapos nakita dito nga gagmay kayo ang or halos zero inyong score sa isa ka subject area or isa ka component. Ano di ay pwede nga ang teacher nga nagtudlo adto nga content kay wala day klase-klase. Yan. Mo na siya nga kato ang i-address. And tungod kay kato man ang na-determine na source of problem, so the teacher or the administration can formulate a remedial instruction para ma-assist na ma-achieve ang competency dito ang nga area. Yan. Okay? Miss, kaning amo ang i-take karon na diagnostic test. Is this the diagnostic assessment that we are seeking to or kaning imong gina-discuss karon na diagnostic assessment? Okay, gani siya. The test that you are actually currently taking, yan, though diagnostic ang iyahang term, yan, that is actually also um, a formative assessment. Yan ang formative man siya, miss. Yan. Um, the topics or subjects that you will actually be taking is it's either na take na either you are currently taking it now, yan, or i-take pa ninyo siya within the school year. And ang ano man ana niya is that or ang reason nga nung gikandak na siyang diagnostic test is we will try to determine if you were actually able to grasp the competencies for each of those components. Yan, di ba? Naka-divide siya into general education, professional education, and specialization. Yan. How much have you known based on the prerequisite knowledge that you actually needed to have for those subjects? Yan. So, multi-purpose sana inyong ginatake na diagnostic ha. Yan. Pero diagnostic assessment in its core function talaga is that it will try to determine what are the areas that you actually have difficulties and how or what are the reasons why you find it difficult. Yan. Another function of assessment is the placement assessment. Placement assessments, these are actually tests done in order to categorize groups of learners. Kaya ganing mga entrance exam, ayan, okay? Those are actually placement assessments. Kasi naka-state sa placement exam, yan, what courses can you possibly be enrolled in based sa imong result sa entrance exam, yan. Or another is that what are the areas or aside sa courses ha, kumbaga asa ka na strand possibly aligned. Yan. And hence, possible po na dito ka mag-succeed. Or, another na form sa placement assessment is that identifying kung unsa ka na klase na or unsa na klase nga learning style ang applicable sa imuha. Yan. Are you a visual learner, auditory learner, kinesthetic, or tactile learner? Yan. And si teacher, magamit na niya na information, yan, in order to group you based on your learning styles. So that's actually also possible. And last but not the least na function of assessment, yan, the summative assessment. This summative assessment is the test done or assessment done in order to determine if the student was able to achieve the set competency level. Yan. Is the student competent or not competent? Yan. Excellent or fairly satisfactory ba iyang performance for that component? Yan. Or and so on and so forth. Yan. So, kumbaga, na-achieve na ba niya ang minimum level of um, knowledge or competency for that area? Kasi for instance, um, gusto na mo mabalaan or we wanted to determine how much do you know about lesson planning. Yan. So, we can actually do a summative assessment of your lesson planning skills. Yan. Based sa katong na after na maka-join mo og course on lesson planning. Yan. Okay, another example. For our subject, we do 4 examinations. The 4 major examinations are actually summative assessment. And this is when your scores or your ratings are then recorded. Okay? Okay, inga na siya. Now, among the different functions of assessment, only summative assessment is recorded. Okay? So, yung ana sa tanan.